This episode is part 1 of 2. Before we get started, we'd like to thank our sponsors for their loyalty and support. This episode is brought to you by Key Heart Marketing, Work With Your Hands, Relentless Digital, and Forrest Perry Marketing. Learn more about our amazing sponsors by checking out the show notes below and our social media channels for Power Women of the Trades. Welcome to Power Women of the Trades podcast. This show is all about breaking barriers and changing the game. Our guests will feature some of today's most successful female entrepreneurs and other advocates of our industry as well. Because if there's one thing we know for sure, female-led entrepreneurship drives change on multiple levels. We want to empower women in the trade industry like you so you can maximize your potential, stay balanced, achieve long-term success, and claim ownership over your life. Let's get started. Today we have a truly remarkable guest whose journey into the trades was anything but conventional. Angela Miller, a powerhouse in the fields of heating, air conditioning, and plumbing, joins us to share her incredible story of how she stumbled into the trades by chance and rose to become a driving force in her industry. Angela's story begins in her hometown of Ohio, where she embarked on a career path in psychology, only to find herself craving a change of scenery and a new challenge. With a bold leap of faith, Angela packed her bags and headed to St. Louis, where she landed a job at SGI, setting the stage for her remarkable 20-plus year career in HVAC and plumbing. Along the way, Angela's insatiable thirst for knowledge and her willingness to dive deep into every aspect of the business propelled her forward, earning her the respect of industry leaders and the distinction of being the first female GM within a company-owned franchise. But Angela's story doesn't stop there. Her journey took a pivotal role when she and her husband moved to Las Vegas, where she began working with Ken Goodrich, a decision that would shape her career in ways she never would have imagined. From developing business processes to navigating integrations and acquisitions, Angela emerged as a versatile leader, bridging the gap between departments and guiding teams through periods of change with empathy and grace. In today's episode, Angela will share her insights on the keys to successful integration, the challenges of navigating change, and the importance of approaching every obstacle with an open mind, gratitude, and grace. Her wisdom and experience offers valuable lessons for anyone who is considering embarking on a business acquisition. So without further ado, let's dive into part 1 of Angela Miller's story.
We have Angela Miller here with Goettl.
Hi, how are you
Wait,
guys
what's
doing
your
today?
official title? Because it's very long.
Yes, it's Senior Vice President of Integrations.
But with Goettl, right?
With
or
Goettl.
with Goettl. Okay,
Yes.
because I think sometimes it gets confusing of like, what does that mean? Is it Goettl or is it a
And
different
what does
group?
it mean where you are? Because you were kind of telling us before we started that when you guys acquire someone, you help integrate them in.
Yes, so I have worked with Ken for the last 16 years on different projects. And really all of his ventures. So, Ken is a serial entrepreneur. So I've kind of been with him from, for the last 16 years in Vegas. And I work with shared services, which is really, everyone calls it corporate, but we like shared services because it's more supportive to the branches. So I work there. And so we basically kind of oversee all of our branches at Goettl. So Goettl employee, been a Goettl employee
for a long time. So how did you get into the trades? Like, what's your trade story? Because I think that's always resonates with our listeners of like what they've done.
It's a good intro to get started.
Yeah, it's not. Most of the time people don't go when they're 5 years old going, "Hey, I want to be an HVAC or plumbing contractor."
Right.
You don't even know it exists. I think
Right.
Yes.
that and I didn't know it existed. Born and raised in Ohio. Decided to just pick up and move and just to experience the world a little bit more, and chose to, pointed to St. Louis and said, that's where I want to go. And I just completely by accident got a job with SGI, which is now Certain Path.
Okay. A best
And-
practice group.
Best practice group. And worked there, and I got an entry level position answering phones. I just, thought like, okay, I'll take the opportunity. Early 20s at the time, and worked my way up, very curious person, and just kind of tried to learn everything I could about the industry. And, took some accounting classes, went to all their training classes, took sales classes. So, met a lot of people and networked through that opportunity. And, that's really kind of where my career started, and actually how I met Ken. But past that, kind of moved around a little bit. And at one point, ended up going out to LA to help the 1 Hour franchise integrate a new LA branch, and then ended up in Palm Springs as a GM for the 1 Hour franchise. So it was the
awesome.
first female GM of a company-owned store.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and realized very quickly that that is a very hard job and it was not for me. So, I learned a lot of amazing lessons, and also learned that I should probably not be a GM.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to that, right? Like,
And it's
when we jump
okay
in.
to say, I feel like it's okay to say that was not for me. And I have struggled. Well, GM or owner is it's really the same responsibility.
it
And
is.
going, I don't think I should be the one doing this. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of freedom in that. I'm putting the right person in the right seat, because there's so many times, and I don't really have the option yet, but like as we get to delegate out, I'm like, I'm not the girl for this job.
right, not the
I cannot do this.
So after you realize, like, okay, GM, cool, not for me, where'd you go from there?
So from there, actually moved to Las Vegas and started working with Ken at that time. So that's
Okay.
pretty much been from that point on. I've worked with Ken on his various projects over the years, and have been given the freedom to really kind of work in every kind of aspect of the business. So, from operations to accounting, I've done a little bit of IT work. I mean, in the sense of like, hey, my email's not working. Can you help me? And I'm like, yes, I will call IT. I will call our IT department. Just became kind of the utility player within that business. And so it's kind of, I think, just evolved. I don't really, I kind of like to get into the weeds of everything. So I don't really say no too often, which maybe a good thing or a bad thing.
Right. So I think like and now again, I'm going to mess up your title, but you integrate the new companies that Goettl's acquired into the processes and procedures of Goettl, I'm assuming, right?
Yep.
So I think your perspective of this topic that we're going to bring up is like something that people don't recognize or realize, the emotional toll that you see after someone is acquired.
You would have firsthand knowledge of the owner selling and getting to see how all of that plays out emotionally and inside the business.
And I think that specifically is what leads a lot of people to hold back from,
or just nobody wants to talk about
or no one wants to talk about it too. I think a little bit of both. And so I am intrigued about your perspective of that, of the process and how you see that and how you help those people, because there's so many different.
Well, because
positions.
prior to us recording, we were talking about grief and the stages of grief.
And how is that the same?
Yeah.
So over the years working with Ken, I've been on both the seller and the buyer side of the acquisition process. And I would say leading up to really kind of, close is, a difficult process in the sense of due diligence. Like, I don't wish that upon anybody.
That's right. That's when, okay, so I just want to make sure we can't assume like our listeners may know, because we probably don't talk about private equity, selling, acquiring, all that M&A very much. So, like, really dumb it down for everybody.
No worries. Yeah.
The due diligence part is after the offer has been signed, and then the buyer comes in and gets into the dirty details of the business.
So due diligence is basically you are going through all the details of the business, and there's legal due diligence. There is commercial due diligence where, that's, I think, where, most of the understanding the business, average tickets, how many calls you have, how the operation works, all kind of the details of really the day-to-day functions. And then you've got the accounting portion of it. So you always want to have I always recommend get a good CPA and a great attorney. They are worth their weight in gold in the sense of having great, advisors. I know you've had some great people on your podcast that I think have done that for people. So highly recommend that. So that leading up to that, and it's not necessarily, I would say, difficult work. It's just time consuming and
probably
heavy
emotional.
lift. Yeah.
It's like the portion when you make an offer on a house and you're so excited and then you get the appraisal and the home inspection.
Yeah, pretty much. And you're just kind of sitting there going, okay, what's, is everything going to work out? And it's just a lot of work. So you kind of, and you're leading up to the day of close, and it's, and it's kind of emotional because you don't know, no matter how much you read about it, how much you, kind of talk to other people about it, there's all these unknowns that I think kind of sit in back of people's heads of, okay, is it really going to be like this? What to expect the day after.
On both sides?
I think even on both sides.
Yeah.
I think it's easier for us because we've done it so often.
But it's the first time for that seller.
Yeah. And so there's
a disadvantage there.
There is a disadvantage. And we recognize that. We recognize that, hey, there's kind of this asymmetry between the two. It works well when we can kind of bridge that gap a little bit for them. Right. So we try to do that. And because we want a good partnership moving forward. So we can't do it, through the acquisition process. We certainly aren't going to do it through the integration. And it serves everyone to have a strong business after close. I guess kind of leading up to that grief is, there's this excitement and this financial reward and this financial kind of, I think, shift in people's lives. I mean, it really is this huge shift. And I think that everyone has this kind of this belief or kind of expectation that, oh my gosh, my life is going to change. And then the day after,
for the better,
and it does,
because they built an ideology in their head or a picture of what their life will look like.
Yeah, and really the day after, it's kind of the same as the day before.
Because they're usually still in the business, at least on the first transaction.
Yep. We love to have the owners come along. We think that's a great, I think that's a great formula for success. So so the day after, it's kind of like, okay, there's all this work. Then you're tired. There's kind of this emotional, and then then there's
the changes happen.
Right. So, I focus on, or our team focuses on trying to reduce the amount of change that happens initially, but any amount of change.
Or do you have to roll it out in phases depending on the culture of the business and where the owner's involved and there's so many micro elements to that you couldn't predict it until you were on the ground.
Oh, you can't. You have a plan. You have a plan. Everyone when you walk in.
Has a plan until they get punched in the face.
So I think you see it from my assumption is you see it from multiple different directions, because you see the owner who this has been their baby and they are emotionally invested, and now it's like, okay, but now there's this,
and now I have to be accountable to somebody else,
and then you have got the employees that have helped grow or build or whatever, and now there's change there. And I think that's from some of the conversations I've had with friends and things like that, that's probably been the biggest holdback for some people of but my team, but my people, but, and so how does that transition start looking? And I'm not even saying just for specifically at Goettl, but how I think it's important to know that there's a position like this that you do to help with that, because I think anyone maybe considering that change is very worried about what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Is there anything special in your role, because integrations is a huge vague word, where there is maybe something you weren't expecting and you guys had to create? I'm trying to think. I'm just trying to think outside of the box. Well, we've never seen this happen before. So let's look at, we weren't expecting that. So on this, let's pull in, maybe we have to hire, I don't know, a counselor to bring in with the team, or some sort of emotional support, or just anything someone may not think of.
So luckily we haven't had to bring in, a professional counselor. But I would say that, just kind of every acquisition is different, and every integration is different. And, to your point, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. So you walk in with the plan, and you just have to be able to pivot, and you really have to be able to listen and see what the body language and what they're not saying.
How long does the integration normally take?
So we do it in phases. So really the first 90 days we have boots on the ground in their office. So they can just come into, we usually hold up in the conference room and just kind of work with the team to help them do, just to answer questions and to help them bridge the gap on this changes. Like we change, ultimately their insurance coverage changes.
Right.
We have IT support. We, our entire, I think, premise is to bring that back office support and really leave the operations at the branch and take that kind of stuff off their plate.
Nice.
And that's the value we kind of bring to the table. That's a lot of communication gaps and bringing in and learning different systems. And so there's, being there and talking with them and having, that communication where they can just walk down the hall. They're never going to pick up the phone.
Right.
So that takes we really try to focus on the first 90 days. And then from there, in those first 90 days, we really get to know the business and the culture and the people.
Because there's no way to know on a Zoom.
No.
You have to have boots on the ground. Now, do you physically go, or do you have a team that goes out?
Both.
Yeah.
So I physically go. I don't necessarily stay the whole 90 days.
If there's like a code red, bring out Angela.
Yeah.
Yes, but I'm there day one. I'm there the first week. I want to, I've been their main contact. And then, but I also have a team. And we, kind of rotate people in and out throughout the weeks just to, again, to make sure that we have support there and that they have a singular person to call. I don't want them to feel like, okay, who do I call if I have a question about this? They just ask the team.
What do you think? Okay, when you guys get on the ground after you've made the still and you're actually there and we're doing this, what's the major pushback? Is it field? Is it technicians in the field? Is it office? Is it similar enough that you could nail it down to one department that you feel like, okay, this is where we need to start
Every
first?
time we deal with this at this place.
You can kind of see the writing on the wall, or is it just completely independent? And
no, I think there's definitely patterns. And some of it really just depends where the change or the nuances happen between that is with the owner and their ability to communicate with their team effectively and how they're feeling about it.
Right.
But that goes, whether it's integrations or even just them running their business, their personality is
Sure.
if they don't handle stress well, their team is going to feel it, right?
Yeah.
Whether
It's like parents. It's like parents with their kids. The way you handle tragedy or something good, they have a way of reading you and
yeah, they set the tone.
yeah.
I think, in like our market, there was a lot of acquisitions for a while. And so in that time, we acquired some new employees. And so it's always interesting how the emotion comes from that, the, of employees that are like, I hope you never do this and I hope you don't do that because this is what happened.
Feedback.
And there's just it's interesting feedback and I've seen it go amazing both ways. I think being acquired by the right partner is the biggest key because we've seen so many people come and go in our space for so long. I think the right partner is key to helping that transition. I'm just totally intrigued by the whole thing.
And I bet even regionally, you get thinking about, because I always think this too, it's a small space we're in, but we're all in different parts of the country and everyone has a different vibe. Like even the way you run your business and the way you communicate. So I bet it's different. You could have seemingly the same size business with a similar operational model, similar owners. One could be in California, one could be in Texas, and you probably got a whole different animal on your hands.
Yeah, I think the it kind of comes from the customer, right? And then the technicians and the owner, and just kind of how people interact with each other. You know, we've just recently entered the Reno market, and I would say that small town feel was still there. And so they had one woman who answered the phone, and they called her grandma, and she would call their customers and ask them, okay, how's your husband? I know he was in the hospital. And it's like, we don't want to change that.
Right.
Like, we don't want
That's
to take
priceless.
that. It is priceless, but you wouldn't get that in Vegas, right? So you wouldn't get that same kind of
There's a lot of nuances and like little micro.
And you got to understand the market.
It really has to be the right partner.
It has to be the right
It's a
partner.
marriage.
But I think some
I mean, it could have a
people-
deadline, but for a while, for
is
it
a
to be
marriage.
successful.
It's a marriage. But there are definitely people who have done it wrong and changed so many things at the beginning, like that customer, that feeling, that expectation. And I think that's what gets people so like, ooh, like no way, because I can't lose that.
Yeah.
And so it's refreshing
and
to
you
know.
shouldn't have to.
Yeah, but it's refreshing to know that there are
They're not changing that.
people out there that want to keep those things and want to do that and not change everything. Because obviously, if you're coming to someone's business to acquire them, there was something that brought you there. And if you go and change everything,
You're going to
then
lose
what was the point of
uniqueness,
the acquisition? You know what I mean?
I mean, we could destroy a business by going in and just changing, you know, the mix of things, or just, you know, the people. Like, I mean, this business is run by people. Like, you can't go out and service the customer without technicians. So we really focus on, you know, so back to kind of like talking about, you know, who has the hard time, what are the patterns that you see. We really want to, I don't want the customers to even know anything happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, they shouldn't have to know. And then second, we really focus on, okay, we're just going to have a new service titan for you to log into as a technician. Here's your new iPad, here's your new phone, but that's it. Like, we want them to go out the next day, and their lives shouldn't change.
Continue performing the same service and with the same expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, to your
I'm just
point.
fine tuning it.
So over your 90 days, I can still see, like, in my brain,
I know.
just thinking of myself.
I feel like I can feel it almost.
feel the stress from the owner if they're still sticking around, but then the employees, because I think everyone puts up a little bit of walls of like, intruder, you know, what's happening.
Yeah, we haven't earned their trust yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, we're just showing up at the door saying, hi, we're here. Here are your new coworkers. And, you know, I think everyone, no matter how much you tell them, and how much it isn't this way in the industry, is everyone thinks tomorrow I'm not going to have a job. I think there's just this kind of, you know, belief out there in M&A, like, oh, private equity comes in and they earn all their money by cutting heads, you know, and that's not how we can do business.
It wouldn't make sense.
No.
Right.
And there's you know, one, we don't have enough technicians in this industry to begin with.
Right.
And, you know, the people that know this business, the call center, the call center people, the admins in the office, there's just, they have that historical information about the business that's so valuable. That keeps they keep the business running. So it is really important to make sure that we focus our time on them, to make sure that we can kind of put them at ease.
Right.
You know, so no matter how much we put them at ease, there's just that voice, I think, in the back of everyone's head of, okay, when's the next shoe going to drop? So we really try to focus on like over communicating, you know, and as far as the owner, so kind of, I think the biggest unknown for us is, how is the owner going to take it? Right. I think it's always different.
It's probably unknown for them too.
Yeah.
Or what they thought is what is happening.
Right.
So they're like, okay, how am I going to handle this? I feel like I can feel that as you're talking about it, or what you thought. Well, it's like, to me, it's not the same, but when you buy a house and you're excited about it and everything looks great, then you get in the house and you're like, wait a second, this closet is too small. You know, it's like things you would never think of till you're in it. And it's, okay, now we have to pivot because this is happening, you know?
This has been
empower women of the trades. Like what you hear so far? Leave us a review in Apple. And make sure to listen to our other episodes wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.